One of the main reasons why you want to use a compressor is to control the dynamics. Yes, why do we even want to do that? Well, you only have so much room to work with here, and you want to stuff, as many of the important elements in here and keep the unimportant stuff out. So that being said, if you have material that is just all over the place as far as your meter is concerned, it becomes very unwieldy. It's hard to deal with. It's hard to mix properly. So let's listen to one of these vocals I have right here and check it out. Watch the meter here on Logic's mixer and watch where it peaks and kind of where the average level sits.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow. I bet for a couple stacks you drop it to the flow.
So you can see it peaks at about negative 1.7, negative 1.8. And it's kind of bouncing around. It's got about 8 decibels of dynamic range. That's a lot when it comes to mixing. You want to reduce that. Depending on the genre of music you're doing. For this, I want a smaller dynamic range. So we're going to compress it. Pull up a compressor. I like this one. It's got a little bit of grit to it. So the main thing we want to do is this meter here tells us how much we're reducing the volume. You don't really want to go over 10, and if it's flatlining here negative 20, you might as well just have a limiter. You still want some bouncing of the volume. So let's just look how these default settings, how they're affecting the vocal.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you.
So we got about 5 decibels of reduction.
A couple stacks, you drop it to the flow.
And if you notice, we're peaking at a much lower level here. So I want to hit the reduction just a little bit harder.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev.
And I'm going to increase it to about 10 decibels.
I bet for a couple stacks, you
no more than that.
Flow. Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm
a little faster release.
I bet for a couple stacks, you drop it to the flow.
Okay, so now we're peaking about negative 4. Let's go back to the original version. Turn that off.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow.
So it's all over the place and we're peaking pretty high. Let's turn this back on.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow.
So now it's more consistent and it sounds almost about the same volume, surprisingly.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev.
Let's turn it off.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev.
So there we go. We've tamed the vocal.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow. I bet for a couple stacks, you drop it to the flow.
Let's hear it with the track.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow. I bet for a couple stacks, you drop it to the flow.
Let's hear it without the compressor.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow. I bet for a couple stacks, you drop it to the flow.
So without the compression, the vocal pops in and out. It pops in your face, comes back out of your face. It doesn't sound, it's not very pleasing to the ear. So, mess around with your settings. There's no magic numbers. Don't get into, well, he had it at 0.3 or, 1.6. Look at your gain reduction here and adjust your output so that it kind of matches. Use your ear. Hope that helps.
Calling all the shots, you could call me the rev. Come through leaning so you know I'm moving slow. I bet for a couple stacks, you drop it to the flow.